be on. Jacob, are you doing the magic?
Jacob does all magic.
It's on. Thank you. Oh. Can I just keep having you?
For the experience. How far you want me to go with it?
Okay. What's up?
How far you want me to go with it?
As far as I think that is that on? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, this is a very informal evening. I welcome everybody that's here because I know it's now winter and it's dark and everybody's still tired from Thanksgiving. So I appreciate everybody that's here. We're going to have a very informal chat with people, mostly people I know, and then the goal is not only to have this all video recorded for future storytelling and action that we're going to be doing, but also to engage anybody who wants to be engaged in what ideas stem from what we're just talking about. We're going to be talking about mostly three things. So related to housing, three different types of things related to housing. So I am Mickey Morissette. I'm the publisher and editor of Minnesota Women's Press. We've had a few forums in this space. I always love it because Jacob takes care of the sound and the video. And I'm a member here, as is Becca. And so it's always been really nice to be able to have the option of video storytelling here as well. So we are here for that. There's snacks out in the back if you didn't see them. There's drinks. Bathrooms are down that way. I think that's what I need to share on instructions. So what I'm going to do is we're going to have a conversation with everybody here, but first I'm going to have them introduce themselves so you have a sense of who's up here. We'll chat about things for a little bit, and then we're going to try to see if we've got interactive thoughts on everything that we've just talked about. And then we're going to be following it up over the next few months with more stories, more action steps, and actually we have funding to do certain things with teams that want to be engaged, thanks to a guy named Dodd Wilson, who also is a member of this congregation. And he said, I want to see my money used for social justice in housing. I said, okay, we will get it done. So that's kind of how it started. Anyway, so yes, I've introduced myself. I'm going to let Adrian introduce himself. Short bio, what you do, and who you do it with. Which is you.
How you doing? My name is Adrian Epps. I am the founder and CEO of TUI Construction, which is a general contracting company, and TUI Village Homes, which is a development arm. Been in business for about 6 years myself. Been in construction about 21 years. And at the moment, I'm developing homes for attainable living.
I'm Ann Mavity. I'm the executive director of Minnesota Housing Partnership, which is a statewide intermediary. We do a lot of research in housing, so folks have the facts and figures about housing in lots of different ways. And then we also help drive statewide advocacy efforts, lots of different coalitions we'll talk about in a minute. And then we also have staff who have expertise in housing finance and development that work with rural communities and Native nations if they don't really have that staff expertise because they're too small or whatever, that we'll help lend that expertise to get some projects going.
Hello, everybody. My name is Shamika. I'm a former high school student at High School of Recording Arts. I also work with Joe in the audience and Khalik. I'm not sure if you guys know him. Yeah, for service learning, which is like for the youth and like youth homelessness, and it's like youth homelessness, college prep, and the workforce for upcoming teenagers coming out of high school.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kyle Hansen. I'm the executive director at Agate Housing and Services. We can talk a little bit more later about the work that Agate does, but Agate is an organization within Hennepin County that serves folks experiencing homelessness in many ways. I have been the executive director there for about 3.5 years, but I have been working in this circle of the housing world for about 25 years now, and resident of Minneapolis. I am also an ordained Lutheran pastor, so approached this work from a couple different perspectives. My husband and I live not too far from here with our family, and I'm happy to be here tonight.
Cool.
I'm Becca Brackett, and I'm a member here at the First Unitarian Society. And I'm a board member of the Twin Cities Co-Housing Network, which is now doing business as Co-Housing Minnesota, because we want to expand our mission to the whole state to promote co-housing, which is a form of intentional housing.
Okay, cool. So again, the purpose of tonight is really to get a conversation on video that will lead to action steps that we will be able to take over the next few months. Some people from MICA, who happen to have a board meeting tonight, have talked to us about storytelling with some of the people who have lived experiences, and a big part of what we want to be doing is creating a bigger platform for stories of lived experience. So I know that's one of the things that will come out of the next month or two. We'll start developing teams around that. And then we've done a variety of stories. Sienna, who's in the back, had kind of kicked us off with a housing series of stories about how encampments are handled in St. Paul and Minneapolis, how they're handled a little differently. We've done extensive interviews with Anne on a few things. We've done conversations with other experts around the state. So what we're really trying to do, I mean, the benefit of being a journalist is you get to have all these conversations with people and learn a bunch of things. But what we're really trying to do around housing is widen the exposure people have to these stories themselves, so that we can collectively figure out, well, what can we do? You can't rely on government funding for a lot of things right now. So what are the solutions that we can do? What can we control? So some of this is just going to be helping to lend itself to a brainstorm session. First step. So, but I want to kind of set the stage a little bit with Anne. Like I said, we've talked to Anne about a lot of different things, and with Minnesota Housing Partnership, she has a very unique vantage point of seeing all the problems. Yes, all of the opportunities that there are for filling in a lot of gaps. And there's data, you've got a slideshow you can tee up at some point whenever you want to. But I wanted to start off by just talking in general about housing affordability or attainability. And can you describe some of the collective actions that are now beginning around, maybe starting with rental assistance?
Yes, so there's a couple questions within that. Because one is just, we do have a lot of housing challenges. And I know for years I would talk to folks about the housing challenges, and everyone would leave the room really, really depressed. And so we've tried to really reframe this, because I do feel like the upside of a pretty broken housing market is that folks are paying attention. And housing is now, on the top 3 priorities in the state that folks are talking about when elected officials and candidates are knocking on doors, when, you're just talking around the Thanksgiving table. Folks are struggling with housing. So I do see that as, again, an opportunity to actually then drive some solutions, because it's not just those people who are having housing challenges, it's touching families at every income level and across the state. So rental assistance is one of the most recent research reports we've actually put out as we're tracking some of the changes that are happening at the federal level. We talk about it as federal funding challenges and changes that are occurring sort of in live time. And so one of the reports we just put out in July, and actually we might have a slide on this one, slide number 10, Jacob, that one of the things that we're tracking is how many folks are actually using federal rental assistance. So what we know is that there's well over 100,000 households that are using federal rental assistance in Minnesota, which is really what helps bridge the gap to what people's income is and what housing costs. And that gap is what that rental assistance can help pay, so that folks have a way to attain and stay in their housing. And of those, over 100,000 rental assistance vouchers, that serves more than 177 households. So it's a lot, 177,000 people in Minnesota. So it's a huge impact. And so when we see challenges at the federal level to zero that out, which they have proposed, the Trump administration has opposed in the 2026 budget, which hasn't gone anywhere yet. We want to make sure that we are advocating on behalf of folks who really need that critical. And it's one of the most effective tools to keep people in their housing.
Let me also bring into the work that you've been doing things around land use and zoning. Can you just kind of describe what those options are?
Yeah. So one of the things we know right now, just by the experiences we're all having, is that our current way that we create housing in Minnesota is not producing enough housing for what we need. So current systems are not working. So we have to change those. And so we're one of the ways, and it's not, housing challenges don't have a single solution. And this is what makes it a little complicated, because there's lots of different levers that we need to pull if we want to really address that full continuum of housing needs and options that we're going to hear about today from a youth perspective and co-housing and all these different ways. Yes to Homes is a coalition that's, frankly, from my professional experience, one of the most unique coalitions, where it has very far-right conservative state senators from rural Minnesota. We have folks from the Twin Cities area that are all saying, what can we do to better improve, frankly, zoning and land use, those processes by which projects get approved? Because what happens is that we are asking the wrong person, the wrong question, at the wrong point in the process when we're trying to develop housing. So when we want robust community input to say, how do you want your community to grow and respond in terms of its housing, and then this community set out a vision, a developer, which we'll hear from Adrian in a minute, will come in and say, I've got an idea to help fill that problem and get through and get all his financing in place and get ready and test the soils out, make sure he can actually build something. But what's happening now is that then you ask the community at the end of that process, hey, Miss Johnson, next door to you, do you want this building built? And she'll be like, thank you for asking, no. And we've already spent now 2 or 3 years trying to create that. So let's ask that question early and then release and do these reforms to better make it easier then to actually develop the vision that communities have laid out. So yes, we have a petition for folks to sign if you want to say yes to homes, because we're trying to get these passed at the state level.
And we'll dig into a bunch of different things as we go through the evening, but I also want to lift up a constitutional amendment that you have talked about. You want to throw that in?
Yes, so what we know is that in addition to needing to release the market to produce housing, because the vast majority of housing, affordable housing, is produced in the marketplace. Affordability sometimes is because we've got what I call hardworking buildings for hardworking folks. They might be old buildings that don't have all the fancy granite and stainless steel, and so they're affordable just because they're older. But the market produces that. That does not require government assistance. The market is producing that. And so we need to do all that, but then we also need to make sure that some of our lowest income households and families and neighbors who still can't, you can work 2 jobs and still can't afford an average 2-bedroom apartment. How do you bridge that gap? And that's where we need predictable resources for folks to access housing, to build housing that's affordable to folks. And so we need more revenue and predictable revenue, because what is it, 2-3 years to develop a project sometimes. And if you don't know that there's money at the end of that to actually build your project, you don't want to be spending a year or two developing it if there's no predictability for money at the end. So we're proposing with a large group of many different organizations. Beacon and ACER, their two leaders are actually the co-chairs of this, to pass a constitutional amendment similar to the legacy amendment that passed for parks and arts and parks, is that what it was, back in 2008, which is 3/8 of 1% of a sales tax. That then would generate almost $500 million per year for housing. And then that would go on for a generation, 27 years. So we need the legislature to agree to put it on the ballot. We think once it's on the ballot, people would be like, yes, yes, that is a small price to pay to generate that amazing resource to help provide those affordabilities.
Great. And we'll dig into that some more too, I'm sure. Another question for you, Anne, is, Minnesota Women's Press has done a lot of stories about supportive housing. And when Sue Abderholden was leading NAMI, we did several stories about the NIMBY aspect of people don't want mental health facilities in their space, but we don't have a lot of mental health places for people. There's places that people need to go if they're recovering from substance use or coming out of incarceration. And there's a lot of reasons to have supportive housing, and we need more of it because it is a place to kind of help people as they're getting back on their feet. But we're losing a lot of money around supportive housing, and so I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what Minnesota has and doesn't have for supportive housing for a variety of communities.
Yeah, and let me just say that for many of us in our families, I would say there's few families that aren't touched by mental health or addiction or other kinds of disabilities where we need support. So many families can provide that to their family members and neighbors, and that is supportive housing. Yeah, but there's also folks that don't have those support networks, and so when we talk about supportive housing, which is housing that's affordable, that's connected to whatever services those individuals who live in the housing, whatever services they need to keep them housed. And that'll be different for different folks. And while we have a enviable, in some ways, coordinated housing finance system to get projects funded, they're often required, and we want folks that need services to access that housing, but there's no similar funding stream to fund services. So we're saying, yes, let's house these folks, but we're not actually, and I say we, collectively, the state of Minnesota, we don't have a clear system to tie services to these individuals who really need it. And so I think that's been one of the gaps. Obviously, there's been some fraud in different programs at the state that then has also landed extraordinarily hard on these projects, the vast majority of which are not fraud. But that's landed particularly hard. And so I think getting the funding for services, so I think about it as we need to fund the buildings and homes the people live in, and we need to fund the support that the people need as well. And right now, that's one of the big gaps.
Two of the stories we've done in Women's Press that I've learned a lot from. One was with a woman named April down in Nicollet County, and she really shared her story about how coming off of a history with substance use, she really needed to be in a space where people who understand that and are also in that same space will help you and not just kick you out if you have a relapse, because she says it's very common to kind of go up and down. And so she said for her, being able to be in this home, this large facility, which was a beautiful building that they created down in St. Peter, really was what helped make sure that she eventually got through the steps she needed, and then she was able to get back together with her family. Another story that I've loved is a woman out in West St. Paul who said they were talking about developing a youth mental health facility in that area, and people in the neighborhood were like, no, we don't want that, it's very dangerous. And she thought, no, it's not dangerous inherently, and we need it. And because she had had personal experiences with people, she knew how important it was. So she got together with a couple friends, and then they brought in some more friends, and then eventually they created they got a coalition that went to the city council, and eventually it passed, and it's been built. And that is kind of, again, one of those things that I love, is the solution stories of how community can do things like that. So one more question for you, Ann, and then we'll move around. The legislative session is coming up. There's a lot, always. We've had some great progress on housing over the last few years, but there's a huge gap over time. And so what are some of the legislative priorities you're hoping to see that people could support?
So back in 2023, when the state had an $18 billion surplus, housing was actually the largest recipient of funding there, about $2 billion all told, that got invested in housing. It's a great one-time investment, as well as some of the more sustainable strategies as well. On Thursday at noon, we're going to find out. We're going to hear the new updated budget forecast from our state economist, we collectively, and we'll find out sort of what's being projected. Generally, you know, these legislative sessions are 2-year sessions. So we just finished the first year, and now the second year will be start in February, actually. And it'll be a shorter session. We don't anticipate that there will be a lot of funding available to fund housing or anything, really. And so looking for these solutions that are strategies like the land use and zoning that can be done, can have a big impact if you do it right, but also don't have what we call a fiscal note. They don't cost anything. And so those are good. It's a good year to be able to do that. I would say the action is going to be in the campaigns for election and re-election with the state senators, the state representatives, and then all the state office holders like the governor and such, because that's where people have an opportunity to ask those candidates questions on what are they going to do about housing. And that's where we have the greatest, I think, lever to influence the future leaders, whoever wins, the future leaders, what they're going to do about housing, and help educate them about what needs to be done.
So maybe one of the projects that we'll be wanting to do is talking points for people, developing sort of a curriculum of what are you going to ask people, what are the bullet points that you want to be able to know and talk to your neighbors about, and then talk to people who are running for office. Kind of a little guide.
Absolutely. And can I just ask, who's a housing expert here? Raise your hand if you're a housing expert. So, thank you. So I think every single one of your hands should be raised, because either because you have a great housing story to tell because you've had stable, great housing, and you can talk exactly how important that was to launch your life every day and throughout your life, or if you haven't had stable housing and all the challenges. We have facts and figures, but talking to candidates, talking to folks about the impact of that is so much more powerful, because we've had facts and figures for decades. And that's not what moves the dial. What moves the dial are what people talk, people being in conversation and talking about the actual impact of what's happening.
Storytelling.
Yes.
personal storytelling. I'm going to ask you a couple more just basic things of definitions.
So many experts
like
here.
so what is modular housing?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways to bring down the cost of housing, and Adrian can probably speak to some of these as well. So, everything from like on the zoning and land use, if you can put 2 homes on a lot that would otherwise only have 1, well, now you've cut your land costs in half, right? And so it costs less for that buyer. The same thing for modular. One of the things that's interesting about modular housing is when you can, it's sort of like the old prefab kinds of housing, but in a much more sophisticated way of what we're able to do, that if you can build housing in a warehouse all year long and then bring it to a site and put it together in days or weeks instead of months, all that time is money. And again, I sort of defer to Adrian as a construction guy, but so modular and all these different technologies that we're looking at, we're trying to figure out ways to make it more efficient, more durable, and more cost effective, also because of that timeline to build it. Oh.
Are you talking modular single family or multifamily?
It's as a tool. It's just as a tool to build housing.
And there's been conversation about, certainly downtown Minneapolis is one example where there's a lot of empty spaces. What is potentially involved in transforming some of that space? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, Pew Research last summer did a great study about doing these office to housing conversions, and actually interviewed Sherman Associates, Chris Sherman, who has a lot of projects downtown, about how do we better utilize office space for housing. It has some challenges because office space often has a lot of internal space that doesn't have windows, and so you have to think about the design pretty creatively to make sure that that's going to work. But, and Becca, when you start talking about co-housing and some of these other models, sometimes those can actually be, those middle spaces that don't have windows can be that community space for folks to live. So it's almost like a dorm feeling, but you actually have your own apartment, but also some community space to live in. So there's great opportunities that are happening already. Not that we want to eliminate all the office space either, because that's a great tax generator as well, but there's opportunities. And you're right, when there's empty properties out there, we want to make sure that we're creative and we allow that creativity to actually be implemented.
One of the, I've talked a bit with Marty Maltby at Peace House and Cindy Mao there, and one of the things Marty told me that really struck me was there's people that will go and connect with people at encampments and try to get them into isolated apartments. But not everybody wants to be in an isolated apartment, and so we do need more innovation around what kind of community spaces that we're building and thinking creatively about
right.
some of that. I'm going to do one more because it'll tee up Adrian.
You can talk all about that.
You get one more question, Ann, just to tee up Adrian, which is, what are some of the things that you have seen emerging developers struggle with? I mean, what are the things that kind of stand in the way from a policy standpoint? And is there something that can be done about that? He'll get into it more.
Yeah,
too,
I was going to
but-
say, actually, I think I'm going to defer that question a little bit to Adrian. I will say that the more that we have access for more folks for newer perspectives and solutions to get into this development space, the more responsive the housing is going to be to communities that want it. And so in the past, when it's if it all is looking the same because it's designed by folks that have been doing it forever and there's no reason for them to be more creative about anything, then it's not as responsive. So I think there's great opportunities, and Adrian can talk about what's working and what needs to help, and then tell me, and then we can go fix it.
All right. We'll move on from you. I'll give
Since
him.
you're asking questions.
Okay, very good. Adrian, hi.
How are you?
Okay. So Adrian and I met in an entrepreneurial class. We're learning how to run a business, basically, after decades. But one of the things that I became familiar with was Adrian was building a property in Minneapolis, South Minneapolis area. It took some doing to be able to get that property so that he could build it. So I'm going to have you tell a little bit about the story of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what you went through to get that property done.
Appreciate you, Mickey. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the question as well. As I say, my name is Adrian Epps. I'm an emerging developer. I just completed my first project, which is over in South Minneapolis. For me, it hits very close to home because I grew up in low income myself. And the Northside projects, Glendale, in between Glenwood and Olson Highway, those projects are now torn down. It's now Heritage Park. I grew up through that, and just going through not really having safe housing, not having housing to where you don't have to worry about somebody knocking on your door, doing inspections and disrupting your day-to-day activity, I believe is very important. When you don't have stable housing and affordable housing, it takes so much, let's just say, stress and a lot of energy for our community to even think about safety. You know, if we're walking out our front door or if we don't have that ownership, how can we think about getting A's in school? How can we think about really prospering in life outside of just survival? And so for me and my company, TWOIE, TWOIE, that's a nickname for my late brother. He passed in '96 in the same projects. He eventually, unfortunately, got shot in his head when I was 14 years old, and he passed. So I turned his name to an acronym, which is The Way Out is Education. And so for my companies, it's not that we just build homes, but we also build people. And the education aspect of things is what it is that it took me to get out of my environment and to allow my visions to become reality. I do have a background in general contracting, but even with my background in construction, me creating this first home and going through this development process took me years, 2.5 years exact, just to get to the groundbreaking. And it took me upwards of $40,000 out of my own pockets, just for the soft cost, the pre-development cost that you actually have to go through with seeing if your project is going to be viable. And then you present this. So I went through the Minneapolis Homes program, but you don't even know if it's going to be accepted. So there's a lot of emerging developers that they fall out just on the pre-development because they can't afford it. We didn't come from generational wealth, but I did come from this community. And so that's what kept me going. That's what kept me persistent. That's what kept me, you know, as that being on the top focus of my mind, is to make sure that I want to create pathways for other people behind me that don't have the same opportunities and try to create those opportunities. Throughout the process, it is a very strenuous, competitive process, and I'm going up against other developers who already have this experience, who already have this money, who already have this funding. I didn't have all of those things, but what I did have was determination. There was plenty of banks that turned me down, but I did end up getting a loan through GMHF. They definitely didn't, I'm gonna say they didn't invest in the project. They invested in me because of my story. And I was able to bring my vision to reality and help out a family attainable housing for 80% AMI. It's actually going to be sold on the 9th is when we close. So that'll be, you know, on the 9th, what's the day, the 1st? So it'll be 8 days from now. One of the great things is earlier today, I actually did my signing portion of the property, but I still got to wait to the 9th for the other family to actually do their signing. It's just so much, I'm going to still say like red tape, you know, even for the programs that we have. I went through and I took a program through the city that's called DTAP. That's for emerging developers. And there was another program that I took was called READY. Even though I have the background that I have, those programs still, it was still difficult for me to understand and to comprehend. So just imagine with individuals that don't have the construction background, that don't have the finances. I was able to get it myself because of my construction company. You know, I took some of my savings out, you know, because I said, I'm going to make this happen. But for other people, I think that the programs need to be a bit more understanding for the people that we have it for. Yeah. So.
So I know, I mean, what struck me with your story, so it took 2.5 years to get the approval to get this property, and then within 5 months, you had an affordable home on the market. And so, yeah, you mentioned a little bit about red tape. Are there things, and I don't know if it's citywide or statewide, but are there things that, what are they looking for? Why does it take so long?
If I knew I would have all the developments going on. I really don't know. Really, to tell you the truth, to me it seemed like it's more of a crapshoot. When you go through the application process, though, it is more about your experience. It is more about your team that you're working with. And I can kind of understand that because they want to make sure that you're going to go through with what you say you're going to go through with the development. But one of the biggest obstacles that I would say is that we don't lack the skill set. We lack the access to the funding to exercise our skill sets. And that's one thing that I was blessed, like I say, with Irene through the GMHF, that she invested in me. She didn't invest in a project, she invested in me. And I'm due to I have 3 other projects that I'll be doing starting in 2026 as well. They're all single family homes. I didn't say exactly what it was, but single family homes, slab on grade, 1,800 square feet, 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, energy efficient, all electric. We do have the house to where it's solar ready, and the new developments, they're gonna have EV chargers inside the garages as well. And the thought process behind that is to where if a family does put a solar system on their roof, that it will offset everything to where they won't have basically zero bills. With me already bringing the bills down with the way that I built the home itself. And I know I'm kind of going off a little bit, but for the fact of to build homes is so expensive now. So just to give you some numbers about my project, it spent $513,000 to build this home. I'm selling this home for $274,000. That makes it affordable for a family of 4 at 80% AMI. I don't have my notes with me, but I believe that's about $97,000. So it's not really about people, it's making homes affordable for the working family, right? Even you having a job, and I heard you say something about the 2 incomes and things like that, or having multiple jobs. I mean, we need subsidies even for the hard-working people in the community. And so, yeah.
We were at, and Anne was there as well. There was an event a few weeks back. Hosted, I think, by LISC. I don't remember what that stands for, but the idea was that what they do, they have a cohort of like 9 emerging developers, and so these are people that are. It was kind of, they called it a mixer, so that people could sort of help them finish or get certain things started. Because like you said, if you haven't been doing this forever, it's hard to get those doors open. It's hard to get things rolling. And several of the emerging developers were women. And they were motivated as well by, one was indicated she knew from her work as a social worker, there were not very many options for single moms. Another person says, from an Hmong immigrant family, a lot of elders end up not having a place to live. Another one of the women said she has worked a lot with people with disabilities. They don't have a lot of options. So these are people who are motivated to try to make spaces that don't exist normally, or at least not easily. And so, again, that motivational factor we should be opening that up. You did mention that, so this was your first completed project, and now a couple doors are opening?
Yes.
Can you talk about any of those, or not really?
Well, I can talk. I mean, it's pretty much the same build that I'm doing as well. So it's kind of like a wash and repeat type system that I'm creating. I love the type of development it is that I'm, have created. Everything down to the blueprints with me designing everything to make sure it fits on these Minneapolis style lots, because we have very narrow lots in Minneapolis. And my whole thing was I want to create 4 bedrooms, not 3 bedrooms, not 2 bedrooms, because I want it for the full family. And then also, what was the question again? I'm sorry.
What else do you have going on?
Okay. So yeah, and that's the main thing. So like I say, for me, I'm kind of different, but the same at the same time. Obviously I'm black and brown. I'm a black man getting into the development industry. So it makes me have to work twice as hard just to get to the starting line. And that's the difficult thing for a lot of individuals. But once I've got there, and there's still a bunch of opportunities that I can't jump and leap into, which I'm okay with, but it's me creating a system, me understanding the system. It's difficult to really understand the city because a lot of things are changing. They do change within, kind of like the twin homes. So I have another project I want to build on the twin homes, but with the funding that we're being allocated, it has to go to prevailing wage. And who actually has prevailing wage companies? Not black and brown. It's going to be already established construction companies. So it's kind of taking the money back out of the community, where we're trying to keep the money in the community to where we can build the community. And so that's kind of a struggle there. But yeah, I got a couple more that's coming up. They're in North Minneapolis.
So are those city-owned lots that you buy, that you get the lots?
Yes. So what happens is that the city puts out a NOFA, a notice of funding availability. They actually just did one earlier this week, or last week. And so they got about 80 lots that are vacant around the city that has been vacant for a while. And so I see that that's kind of a way to get, taxes coming back through, coming back through, getting money coming in, and then also providing opportunities to designate those for affordable housing, which I say attainable housing, because of the stigmatism of affordable. You have all the negative thought process behind it, but like I say, this is actually going to families, hard-working families, that's doing what it is that they need to. And so you would purchase a lot at a subsidized rate, from anywhere from $5,000, some of them go up to $30,000, but it's going to be a reduced fee of what that lot is actually worth. And then after you purchase the lot you actually have to create your development first. You have to show them, go through all the XYZ, and then once that gets approved, then you get to start the development on those lots. So,
Okay.
no.
Do you have
Pass the mic.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry.
kind of naturally loud though. Do you have a team, or are you working by yourself?
So that was one thing. Originally, I was working by myself. So I had to develop a team because there's so much compliance and paperwork behind all of these things. Like I say, the average black and brown person, you don't even have to be black and brown, but it's so much paperwork. And when I say it's a lot of legalities behind it, so I actually have to hire 2.
So you have to.
Just for the paperwork itself.
Are you
and the
hiring?
compliance. When I am, we can definitely talk about it. Absolutely.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Yeah, he's got a couple daughters working with them. So, one thing I want to mention, you mentioned GMHF, and that stands for Greater Minnesota Housing Fund. We've done stories with Irene in the past. There's actually a housing issue here from 2024 that we did with her. They have done amazing work, like you said, investing in people. So let me think if there was one other follow-up I was going to give you. Otherwise, we're going to move to Shamika. What? Okay.
So just another thing is just because like with Irene, I'm always going to send her shots out because she worked hard to make sure that I was able to get that loan, that construction loan, to make this project happen. And I just really want to tell all of you all that I'm living proof that given the opportunity, we will prevail and we can make a difference in our community. I'm just one of many, just one, and many more to come. Continue to give us this opportunity, and we can continue to show that we can help and build our community the way that we need to.
Great. Yes. So let's move on to Shamika and get everybody engaged in the conversation. And now, do you want us to tee up? Well, I'll just
I
mention.
think we should watch the video first.
Watch the video first. Okay, Jacob, you got the video ready to roll? This is something that.
I could give an introduction.
Yeah, do a
So,
little intro. Yeah.
Last year,
Eat the
we.
mic.
Oh.
Eat the mic.
Okay, I'm sorry, y'all. So last year in school, we had made a video with our teachers, Joe and Khalik, about youth homelessness and college prep. So this is the video for youth homelessness. We had did a study of how many homeless teens there is in Minnesota, also the struggles that you go through, the requirements that you need to actually get help, and all the struggles behind being under 24 and homeless. So he could play the video.
When most people think of homelessness, they picture adults struggling with addiction or mental health issues. But here's the truth. There are thousands of kids and teens like us trying to survive in one of the coldest states in the nation.
And it's not just the streets. Many of us are couch hopping, sleeping in abandoned buildings and vehicles just to stay warm because shelters are full.
When I was homeless, I frequently abused alcohol to forget about what's going on in life.
When I was homeless, I was very depressed and felt neglected by even my loved ones.
As you can see, youth across Minnesota faces many challenges on a daily basis, but it's not the end of our story. I too have experienced homelessness and raising a child at the age of 15. If we can do it, you can too.
Right now, if you need shelter and safety, school social workers, school counselors, and the Youth Services Networks are always available to help you. We have included a link to the Youth Services Network app to help you get assistance immediately from places like Safe Zone, who help with housing and getting a government ID or social security card.
Libraries are a warm and safe place. Some also employ social workers to help you find resources immediately.
Shelters are a temporary fix, but some youth report experiencing even more trauma in these spaces, like theft or abuse. It's not always safe to share spaces with adults. The best investment Minnesota can make is in us. Investing in permanent housing and programs that give us the skills to build a better future and easier access to health and human services in the neighborhoods we live in. We're asking legislators to invest deeply in affordable, permanent housing and lower barrier access to services.
Youth hold the truth, and it's time Minnesota listens.
So I'm going to just give you a very open-ended question, and you can go wherever you want with it, which is sort of what inspired you to be part of making this? What is it that you're hoping more people understand? I'll just go there.
Okay, so what inspired me to just hop on, get involved with the project? So back in 2017, me and my mother's house had burnt down. And we didn't have rental insurance at the time. So when our house burned down, we kind of was like on a slope. Like we had no plan. We had nothing. So that really inspired me to be more outgoing and speak more about the issue, because when I did lose my house in 2017, it was hard getting another house. Around that time, like a year after that is when COVID started, so everything was like horrible. Like I didn't go to school, mom barely went to work, so it was a lot. It was bad, really bad. So that is what inspired me to just be more open about the problem and just be more vulnerable to certain programs and certain like services in life. What was your other?
What are you? Actually, I'll give you another little question in the middle, which is one of the things when we talked, you talked about there's waiting lists and limited shelter options and things. So kind of what do you want, what do you wish more people understood about what the limitations are?
Okay, so just to speak back onto when my house burned down in 2017. When my house burned down, when someone thinks of an average black family, they think of a single mom with a lot of kids. Well, I have a dad. So it was me, my dad, my mom, my brother, and my two brothers. So we couldn't get any help unless like my mom was running from a domestic situation or she was homeless with kids. Like it couldn't be just her, my dad, and us. Like he had to be the bad guy. Something had to go wrong. It had to be a problem for her to get help. We couldn't just need help. So that goes also to like, it's so many programs out here that helps kids and helps teenagers, young adults, but it's so many requirements. You need to either be a single mom, you need to actually be homeless. So when they think of homeless, they think outside, sleeping at a park or sleeping in a car, but you can be homeless going house to house. If you don't have a stable home to go to every night, then you're homeless. If you go to your cousin's house, then your other cousin, then your grandma, then your other grandma, you're considered homeless. You don't have a stable home of living. So going back to going to a shelter is not always an option because there's not always a bed available. There's not always space. And then if you do go to a shelter, sometimes you have to have a baby. You have to be in this situation. You have to be in this situation. You never can just need help. It always has to be a problem. And then if it isn't a problem, it's so many problems you go through just because you're having one situation. You can never just need help. It's always, oh, well, do you have a kid? Do you do this? Do you have this going on? It's always something. It's never just nothing. It's always a problem.
And what do you hope? Like if there was, suddenly all the money we needed and stuff, what would you like to see? One of the things we had also talked about is that, there's a lot of teenagers, a lot of children in situations, and there's a lot of things that we need. So I'm wondering if you want to talk a little bit more about what the gaps are from your perspective with youth in particular.
Okay, so I could say that a lot of gaps goes between, I'm pretty sure you guys heard about like Safe Zone and Youth Link. So those are programs that are open from like 9 in the morning to 6 p.m. So if I was homeless and I just went here from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., after you close, I'm back outside. There's nothing after that. There's nothing for long. It's never something for a long-term situation. It's always for the moment. It's nothing for this moment and then the moment after that. It's nothing. It's not generational. It's just always for the moment. Like transitional housing, you get into a transitional housing program, then you have 6 months up to a year. Then once your year is up, if you don't find a home that you can afford, or if you can't figure out another program or figure out what you're going to do, you're back to square one. You can get into a program and they can help you, but they help you so much. And then you get to where you need to be, and then when you're there, but then you have a limited time because the program's not forever. You have a year, 6 months at the most, probably even 3. And then when you go through the program, you do all the steps that you need. You do what you're supposed to do. And then when you get there, it's like you get there, you do what you do, and then you're back to square one because you can't afford the things that they're throwing at you. You're 17, 18, and they want you to pay $2,000 in rent. You don't even make $2,000 a month. So how are you going to afford that? Then it's like, then when you are able to afford it, you have to have a kid. You have to be in this situation. It really goes back to single parents. Like if you're not a single parent with a kid, you're not going to get no help. You can't just be alone. Like you can't, like me, for an example, I'm currently going through a situation. My mom is moving. She will be 55 next year in March. So she's considered as like a senior citizen after that. So she's moving to a senior citizen building. So the building only has like 1 bedroom. Obviously, it's 2 of us, which I'm 18, so I'm considered as an illegal adult. So she also is on like Section 8. So her Section 8 voucher is going to go down after March because she turns 55. So they would recommend her to go to like a senior citizen building. But I'm only 18, so I can't come with her. So I'm currently going through a situation. Now I have to find out where I'm going to live when she moves in May. And I could afford to pay rent, but like rent is not cheap. So that's the problem.
Yeah. And like you have indicated, there's these momentary spaces that we create, but not the generational spaces. We need more things that just last.
Yes, so I could say a lot about that. I'm always down for a good conversation about a generational change. Like I have a little brother, he's 7. And from the situation I am in now, if from him being 7 and me being 18, and 10 years from now, 11 years from now, he'll be 18. I wouldn't want my brother to go through the same things we went through. Like when our house burned down in 2017, he wasn't born yet. So he was born, but he was a baby. My apologies. But he didn't go through the struggle because she just did. She kept him out of that. So I could say, what could we do for a start is like the programs that they do have, the hours should be longer, at least to like 10 o'clock. 6, that's kind of like, I don't know. I feel like that's like right when school lets out, so you just have somewhere to go for 2 hours and then like you're back to square one. A lot of more shelters, I feel like they're building a lot of nice luxury penthouses and then people just live there, but it's a lot of people who are outside. Like we also did a study with the Wilder Foundation. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but we also did a study with them and their numbers are not accurate. They did a study for the youth homelessness and their study came back that it's 10,000 homeless youth across Minnesota. But then when we did our study a few months after them, we did a study and our study numbers came back that it was over 13,000 youth across Minnesota that was homeless. So I guess, yeah, their stats was not accurate. As you guys can see in the video, we did, that was the first slide about as the time went on from 2022 to current, it went up a lot. Like it's camps everywhere. Like I don't know if you guys been like on the south side of Minneapolis. They had like put gates up under the like highway because the people was sleeping there. So we also went to the legislature as well. And yeah, that we're not gonna talk about that because that man was very mean. So.
Okay. One thing, so Joe is also in the audience today, and at some point I'll want Joe to kind of talk a little bit about a couple things. There's a program that teaches kids in the high school students, was it? In the trades, and they've actually built homes. And then I know I was part of the youth summit. I went to the youth summit that Joe and Khalik Rogers have put on at the House Chambers. And the 2 top issues that the teenagers that were there gathered around that want to be part of developing legislation for this coming session is mental health and housing. You know, and all the kids were talking about how close to home this is, how many people they know affected by both mental health and housing. And of course, without housing, you can't deal with anything else. So housing first is another thing we've done a story on it's done really well in some cities. I think it's Milwaukee and I think Houston have done a really good job, but otherwise it can be kind of in name only. So anyway, that kind of tees up Kyle. Can we move to Kyle? And Kyle, can you talk a little bit more about what you do and the street outreach work that Agate's involved in?
Yeah. So Agate Housing and Services is an organization that is decades old. We were formed from the merger of St. Stephen's Human Services and the House of Charity in 2021. So 2 long-standing organizations who really were kind of at the forefront of some of the areas, especially around street outreach and some of the work that's done in the community. So at Agate, we have a whole continuum of services, many of the programs similar to the ones that you were talking about, that we do the best we can to help folks. At the end of the day, we serve over 6,000 people annually through our services. In particular, our street outreach teams do a remarkable job of matching people up with the right places and circumstances. But the work that they do is hard. So these are folks that are out in the community every single day, talking to folks who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness. If you are living outside, there may be many barriers to even interaction with other folks. whether that's mental health issues that you're struggling with, whether that's chemical or other addiction issues, or whether it's just that you have had an experience that landed you in the place where you are currently at, right? So there's been broken trust. There's been broken trust in your neighborhood. There's been broken trust in probably your family. There has been broken trust in your community, in your government circles. And that broken trust is something that needs to be repaired so that people can then enter back into the system again. So I look at the job of street outreach workers as what is today about for the individual that you are working with, that you are approaching. Our teams always go out with something tactile, food, socks, gloves, coats. They load up their vans in the morning before they enter out into to the community to do their work. One thing so what does that connection look like, right? The first question really comes around what do you need today? What is today about for you? What do we need to do to help you today to get you to tomorrow? That may be as simple as a name. It may be as simple as we need some food, some water, again, something warm, a sleeping bag. We always offer help and assistance for referrals to things like shelter or try to find other places for people to be. But when you have that broken trust, you may not be ready to enter back into those systems. And if you think about shelters across the spectrum are designed for different entities, different people. You have women's shelters, you have men's shelters, you have couple shelters, you have family shelters. And you may be in a circumstance where you may not fit into those categories well, which is problematic. We would not want to, for example, in your case, you may have to separate in order to go into shelter. If your mom would have to go over here, you would have to go over to this one, and you don't want to be apart from the people that you are also trying to keep alive, right? That you are trying to provide support for. So those complexities add difficulty to trying to find space for people. You may have a pet with you that is, your what is keeping you together, right? And so our shelters, we have a couple shelter downtown located at the FCC church. The couple is defined as you define that. It could be a mother and an adult child. It could be a spouse. It could be a partner. It could be a best friend. We don't define that relationship for you, but we provide space for you to be together. We also allow you to bring your animals or pets. We also just opened a brand new shelter, 54 new beds plus 8 emergency winter mats, we call them, in the Longfellow neighborhood of Minneapolis. That just opened in November, but specifically designed with the architects work with folks with lived experience to design the space. So it's not always about, street outreach work isn't always about finding safety or a spot to be that night. And I'll give you an example. Our street outreach team has been working with a woman who we've known and had relationship for going on probably 8 years now, in and out of different circumstances with medical issues, other issues. For the last probably 4 months, when I would leave work at night, she would be setting up her chair right outside my front door in the corner of my steps. She knew it was a safe place, sleeping bag, set up a little table next to the chair, and this was her settling in spot for the night. If I tried to engage with her, there was no trust there, right? She didn't know me, so there wasn't communication. Very hesitant to go into shelter, really hesitant to move into a larger apartment building where there's lots of people for mental health issues. But our team kept working with her, building trust. hey, today let's go drive by this new building that we're opening. And it took a couple times of driving by. And then the third time we got out of the car. And then the fourth time we went into the building. And the fifth time, okay, I'm ready to make the call to Direct Shelter Connect to get a bed reserved here. But after years of working with someone, they spent their first night in a shelter setting in our new building last month. So those are the types, it's about relationship building. But then we have a bricks and mortar office building at 2309 Nicollet, where our street outreach team then does the hard work of, okay, now that you're here and we're having communication, what do we need? What are your goals? What does housing success look like for you? And then we start to match up programs with people. And it's as complicated as, in order to make the application, you need some kind of identification, right? In order to get your identification, you need some kind of other identification that shows who you are. So, and you can't do them in random order, right? So social security card, birth certificate. Birth certificate is first, so you can get your social security card, so you can get your driver's license. So that takes months, folks. And if you're not from here and you don't have contact with family members back home, sending things off to government entities in other jurisdictions, but we do all of that work and track all of it. Then where are you going to mail it to? Right? Where are you going to mail it to? So our street outreach teams, we have mail collection spots for over 1,500 people in our office, so that people know that we will hold your mail for you. If you do it at the post office, they only hold it for a certain period of time. They're only open certain hours, and so that gets complicated. And so they come to us for that. So that's another street outreach piece. And then it's really about getting to the point where we're ready to move that person on to one of our other teams or a team at another social service agency that then can help continue to walk with that person. But really, it's about putting those pieces of the puzzle together for each individual. And last year, our street outreach teams, we only have 7 workers, but they had impact on over 3,900 individuals within our community. And if you add up how many people that is a day divided by 7, it's a lot, right?
I'm going to ask you one more thing related to gaps, but one of the things, we had Press Forward Minnesota enabled us to have a grant to go to certain communities and have conversations. One of the places we went to was Winona, and that was focused on housing, and it was included people who are in domestic violence, abusive environments, but really can't afford to go anywhere, have no place to go. There was also a man in the conversation who it's kind of his job because he works with people who are trying to be downtown in Winona for mental health treatment, but public transportation doesn't really exist, and so he tries to find like a private landlord so that somebody can live downtown and be able to talk them through. Again, they're trying to make sure the narrative isn't that, oh, this is going to be a super dangerous thing and they're not going to pay their rent. And he's able to talk through to people about the fact that that's not true. And so, anyway, the Winona conversation was very focused on particular gaps in housing that certain people were trying to fill, because housing can seem so overwhelming and that everything just needs to be really big and expensive. But I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about some of the local gaps that could be filled by normal people.
Yeah. So I think that there are, as you both of you talked about, there is significant cost, time, expertise, all of the pieces to lend to development, right? So it takes years. The building that we just finished and opened in November took 6 or 7 years total, and had to have a lot of partners involved state, federal, local, all of the pieces to put that piece together. But when you're talking about, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Can you refresh the question just 1 second?
Yeah, there's gaps there.
Gaps.
Can be
yes.
overwhelming, but bites.
Yeah, so I think that some of the unique pieces, the funding streams for how to build housing, the systems are set up, right? So the NOFAs, the funding applications, the funding streams, some education pieces. But once the building is built, there is limited funding available for the folks that live there that need the support. Transitioning from living outdoors to living indoors, oftentimes in isolation when you're used to a group of people outside, can be really terrifying. And so even on the building that we just built, there's only a small percentage of the units that actually have subsidies attached to them for services. Now, we're providing services for everyone that lives there because we've been creative to be able to patch pieces together for that. But there are gaps in services. And I think that that's one thing that is continuing to be threatened. Right now, there are some really difficult conversations happening at the federal level around funding for services, particular housing support services, where up to 170,000 folks could lose that piece of stability if the Department of Housing and Urban Development gets to go through with what they've planned on doing. So those gaps exist. But what I have seen happening recently is that people are really wanting to step up. And sometimes it's the really small things that communities do that make a big difference. For example, the Metro Inn facility is one of the places that we own. We purchased that facility. It's down towards Bachman's on the Lindale Avenue corridor down there. It's an old roadside motel that we have turned into permanent housing with help and support through Hennepin County. Now, we took over that building with very limited funding resources to actually run the property, so we're pretty bare bones. The community around that, in a remarkable way, stepped up. Oftentimes, you talked about NIMBYism, where it's just not in my backyard. This was, in my 25-year career, this was the warmest welcome to a community. And I've had that happen twice now because the Longfellow neighborhood also welcomed us with open arms to their community. For you folks and advocates to show up at community meetings when you know that there are going to be people there who are going to say, please don't build that building here. For there to be voices in the room that say, please do build the building here and tell us how we can be good neighbors, it makes a huge difference. Now, the church across and down the street are making curtains and bedspreads for all the residents that are moving in. They're putting together move-in baskets for every single resident, and they have a stockpile of them as turnover happens of cleaning supplies, fresh bedding, towels. Because if you're moving from being outside to being inside, you don't have much to bring with you, and that first night in a space can be pretty difficult, right? So the warmness of folks in the neighborhood actually showing up, and all it took was them saying, what do you need? Asking the question. I have a woman at my particular church who's sewing hand towels with little, you are loved, for our trans community, for our queer community in rainbow colors or trans colors. And she brings over 8 of them every couple of weeks for folks moving in. So I think that there are a lot of little things that community can do. Community is gathering to provide lunches for our shelter guests by making 100 sandwiches and signing up and bringing them. So there's a lot that people can do on just being a good neighbor basis that can be really helpful for organizations like ours that are trying to provide support. But there may also be opportunities for folks to really do mentoring, to help with resume writing, to help with all of those pieces that we don't have enough funding as nonprofits to really do all of it. But there are pieces and places where people can help lend support.
I've been over to the Peace House a couple times, and they provide lunch and lunch conversations for people, and it's, you know, because there's, you know, they actually have like a question of the day, and then they also have like somebody will come in once a week to do bike repair. Somebody comes in who's a barber. They do arts and crafts things, and you know, again, it might seem small, but it's also, I mean, again, it's all about dignity, and it's about humanity, and it's about reaching out to people where they are, and being part of, being a good neighbor.
Yeah. So, and you're going to hear a lot in conversation, I think, because there was lawsuits filed today against the funding proposals through HUD. So there's going to be a lot of deep conversation around this. And any time that you can educate yourself so that you can be a better advocate for the systems that need advocacy for. Right now, the federal government really wants to turn around 30 plus years of data-proven measures that really increasingly have showed good results, right? The model of housing first. Until you have a roof over your head, how are you supposed to do any of the other pieces that try to put the puzzle back together for you, right? So we really believe that the roof comes first. The proposals are now to turn that on its head, where you have to jump through even more hoops before you get to that place of permanency. Taking money away from permanency and putting it into short term, which we know is never long enough to get people through the continuum where they may need to be more stable. So really your voices on those matters and paying attention to them, I think is important. You talked a little bit about the unique models of housing, and one of the things that we have done in our newest housing apartments is create some dorm-like rooms. They're all single-room occupancy, which are small units, but they're behind a closed door in a dorm-like setting where there are 6 folks living together, sharing living room, kitchen spaces, but have separate individual bathrooms and then private showers, but a small room, but you can come out of your room and have community and support. So people to help support you on that continuum. And we've tried to work with other nonprofits to provide us with a group of people that could do these pilots to live together. So that's an experimental model that we are trying out. And so far, people seem to really love that idea of having the option to go to your room, but also having the option to come back out and have some shared support when you need it to.
A couple of years ago, I was at Avivo Village, which has this, it's like a big warehouse space, and then it's almost like pods. And so there's security there, and then, like you said, a great sense of community, but there's only so many of those, and there's not enough. And I know other people have talked about, well, what about having permission on church lots or things for tiny homes? And so I know, again, there's innovation, but it probably needs community to say, let's do this. And so anyway, that'll be part of what we can do, is figure out what guide and talking points, again, can help make this happen.
And recent laws in Minnesota do give churches more opportunities to skip some zoning things and do some other things on their own properties around things like tiny homes, and there have been some really creative church housing partnership models. There's a really great one. The congregation on Chicago Avenue, Calvary Lutheran, just gave up its sanctuary and they built housing with a partner on their site, and now they're leasing their sanctuary back again, and still worshiping in the same place, but now they have 40 or 50 new neighbors right on what used to be their parking lot area. So there are a lot of really unique partnerships too, but that took the church saying, hey, we want to do something. Who are the partners who could help us with that? So I think that they were a really creative group of folks who found a solution.
So I didn't kind of mention much about the TUI, the way out is education. And because I heard some about Joe that has something with the trades, and so I'm actually developing a mentorship program with my church, High Praise Ministries, and the Destiny Center over in North Minneapolis. And that's part of what we're looking at trying to do for affordable, well, attainable housing, is that they actually own their building. It's kind of shaped like a warehouse, and we want to add another 3 levels above that. So I'd be interested to see some of, the other churches that you mentioned and see about those possibilities. And then also, Joe, if we could potentially talk to see about jump-starting the Way Out is education mentorship program for the youth as well. And the other thing would be is that, my vision when it comes to building these homes for affordable families and then creating my mentorship program, having the same students or mentees building these houses at actual affordable wages. And that would be so awesome, and that's really what my dream is, and that's what's going to happen through TUI. And if I can get any support on that, that'd be awesome as well. But that with those programs and the developments for the churches, and because they can get past some of that zoning, I think that's a very good high point there.
And Shamika, then you can be part of his team.
And that was another thing, providing jobs for
Yes.
individuals like Shamika. She asked me here on stage. I can't do it at this moment, but hopefully once we make these things happen, I would love to.
I'm going to mention just a couple little things, and then we're going to move to a different form of intentional housing, a variety of ways that we can have intentional housing, co-housing. But I was just going to mention that at the youth summit, one of the young men that was there, I overheard him very quietly say that he would love to see that there was free mental health access to anybody who has lived on the street, and that should just be part of what we do as a community. And then I remember years ago interviewing a woman at Dignity House, which does provide services to try, or was at least at that time trying to help people get the services that they needed. And one of the women I was interviewing, I asked her sort of what's on her wish list, and again, I know so little, and she said, I would just love to have new undergarments that fit me. It's like, yeah. So again, part of what I hope we'll get to is the big ways, the talking point ways, and the small ways that anybody can be part of a solution. So Becca, I want to move to you. So one of the things that I've also heard from some of our readers and our community around the state is, there's both LGBTQ elders who are trying to figure out where can they comfortably live. There's other elders that would like to be in a different space, that's not necessarily in an isolated apartment either. And so there's a lot of communities that are would love to find a sense of intentional space. So I'm wondering if you just want to talk about what you've been doing in the co-housing, what your goal is in co-housing, and what does it take to get there? It's a process.
Well, yes. The question of NIMBYism and neighborhood support brings to me another organization that I've supported, Neighbors for More Neighbors. And they are interested in lobbying and changing rules so that a building with more density can be built in a residential area and so on. Yeah, they are part of the Yes to Homes. Good. And I guess I have some slides, and I'll have Jacob run those.
Do you have slides?
Why co-housing? Is there housing out there that can help individuals live more fulfilled lives, that can help create connection between neighbors, give more satisfaction to residents without luxury, and that the residents manage the building or the program, not a landlord? And that luxury item is because most of the new homes, maybe not TUIs, but on the periphery where I drive out there, there's the mini McMansions, and because if they want to build that one house, it has to be super expensive so they can get a margin and make a profit. Well, that's not the kind of house that I want. I want the community, because our usual market provides all the privacy that you could wish, in your single family home, but none of the community. You can't go and choose, let's have community here. At least not a lot. So co-housing is an alternative model with full-featured private homes rather than your, little individual bedrooms. But as someone said, everyone living next door to someone who cares about them, which we all would like to live. And next, what do I have next? I have more slides. I don't know where they went. Yeah, and then, is there more? So co-housing is a special type of intentional community founded by a group who have a common purpose, who want to work cooperatively with each other and create a common lifestyle that reflecting their values. And the picture is of one in Madison, Wisconsin, which has some subsidized units. And it took them a long time. I think it took them 8 years to get that one built. So next. In co-housing, future residents hold their dream of a community, a dream of a private home for each household, and that they work together, they have common meals. They can cook in their own home, they can stay home, but they want to see their neighbors, they want to be together, and they cook for each other. They don't hire catering, they do it. So these shared common spaces, so it's resident designed along with, of course, an architect and developer, and then they self-manage it afterwards, which senior co-ops here in Minnesota, there's many, many of them, but they have to be under Ebenezer or some other organization. They can't run their own show. So that's the book that's kind of started it all by Catherine McCammett and Charles Durrett. They learned about it in Denmark. They were way ahead of us. Next. This one is in Seattle. It's very small. Look at that. The white building is the co-housing. Only 9 units. Multiple generations, and the lower level is the architect's office. The next page, this is their little courtyard so that the kids can play in the bottom and they can see each other on their balconies. So that's an example of dense urban, although co-housing can be rural, it can be suburban, it can be in a high-rise, it can be single-family homes. It's that feeling, it's the intention to work together. And next, what have I had? There's only 2 co-housing communities in the Twin Cities, Monterey in St. Louis Park, and the Twin Cities Family Cooperative Co-housing in Marcy Homes, which is a new group, and it's a family that lived in White Bear. They had a 2-acre lot, but they didn't feel they had enough community. And so they said, we don't have 5 years to wait. We want our kids to be with other kids now. So they bought a 7-unit building in Marcy Homes, and they're fixing it up because it was in really bad shape. It was full of students. And they hope there's enough space to build garages with units above to increase their community size. So they're very interesting. You can find them on the web if you have Twin Cities Family Cooperative Co-housing. And they are, so they're an interesting group. Next, what's next? Because co-housing reduces social isolation and gives a sense of belonging. Next. And it's good for older adults with meaning and purpose, boomers having new opportunities, friendships. There was one co-housing community, and this older woman, like 80-something, moved in, and her daughter said, well, you have to have the unit right close to the parking lot so you can get in your car and go places. Well, she did that. But then in a year or two, a unit opened up right close to the common house. She moved there because her community was where she wanted to be. Next. And it's good for families because there's like, they have one lawnmower that does the whole place. They garden together. There's other people that you trust well enough to babysit your kids. Kids can spend time with older adults because their grandparent might live across the country, nowadays. So it's supportive because it's your really good neighbors. Next. It is different from housing co-ops. Co-ops go by the democratic 50% rule. When there's a decision they have to make, you go by 50% plus one. Well, in a small group of housing, if only 50% like the idea, that's not going to work too well. So they usually go for almost a consensus model where you keep working it over to get agreement that everyone's going to be okay with. You don't have to be gung-ho, but you have to be okay with it. So that's a group that's mating there for their, decisions. Next. Of course, it requires clear expectations because as we're doing it ourselves, how many times do you have to cook dinner? Well, for the group, it might only be every 6 weeks. But, if there's different abilities, maybe they can't cook, but they can do some book work or they can babysit. Next. And so here was an example of things that might happen in your day in the life of co-housing. You might be walking down the path to get commuting and share some ideas with your friend. Carpool the kids to daycare. Ask your neighbor for the cup of sugar that you forgot. Having a happy hour in the common area after work. Cooking with each other. At dinner you say, oh, there's this good movie, and you make a plan to go there. Working on the garden and committees and so on. So those, is there one more? Oh, so what action, you talked about actions. Here in the Twin Cities, there's only 2 of these communities, but like in Denver, there's multiple, Boulder, Colorado, California, one after another, they, kind of mushroom. But self-financing is getting really tough, and construction is getting very expensive, as Adrian said. But desire for more control over your housing is a common thing. So when they build new buildings, having common space, like you guys did, can build relationships and expand the living space. So your unit is smaller in co-housing, but you're getting all this addition of the common facilities. And some of them only, they're connected, and so why have a washing machine in every single unit? You can come to the laundry room and get it done together. So I'm thinking that multifamily projects could involve future residents or representatives of those type of people in the planning and design of their amenities. Do the folks want those marble countertops, or do they want a room for barbecuing in the patio? And at all price points, multifamily buildings could involve residents in management decisions, which is characteristic both of co-ops and co-housing. So that's my slides. Because people don't know what co-housing is, and they didn't patent the name or trademark it, whatever. So there's a lot of places that are building private student dorms, like around the university, where they rent, but they have to be out of there for the month of August. So that's not a permanent home. It's like you're just visiting, but with multiple bedrooms and a little common area. But the idea of permanence, and I compare to Europe, where there's, quote, social housing, which means public housing means the country, the town, or the state built it, but you can stay there forever, and you don't have to remain poor. But here, these buildings that are, quote, affordable, you have to, the mix of the income of the people has to be right for that, program. Well, that's crazy because you want people to move in and stay there. And if they luckily get a better job and more money, great, let them stay there, and then their kids can inherit the unit or the building or whatever. But that creates stability, whereas these programs where it's all based on numbers and, like you said, Shamika, if you don't have the right problem, you can't go in that building. So our vision is that everyone would have living next door to someone who cares about them. The small towns in America, I would say in the 50s, were kind of like that, but because people didn't move so much. And now there is a lot of more mobility, and people say, well, I've lived here for 5 years and I don't know my neighbors.
So it's like consciously building a village, being very intentional about it, not being a gated community. It's about creating a space where people feel a commonality and there's a purpose to being social with each other.
And that they know each other.
Yeah.
I talked to people at Cambridge, Massachusetts co-housing, and that's a city. It's dense. There's transit and everything nearby. And they've kind of got one row of connected apartments and then another couple of different buildings and grass and gardens. And somebody said, well, do you have everybody have a special lock and, security and all this stuff? And they said, well, we've never had a break-in because as soon as somebody walks on our property, we ask if we can help them. We want to help them, but we don't want them to help themselves to our stuff, but...
I want to, let's see, what time is it anyway? Okay, yep.
One of the things, as you're talking about co-housing, and we were talking earlier about the Yes to Homes Coalition, and Jacob, maybe if there is the scan codes could go up there, that so much of the housing that our city organically organically grew up creating have been illegal now to do. So the SROs and all these ways that you might have workers come in and say, I just need a place to stay, and maybe they can actually serve me a meal. Well, that's not allowed under. Minneapolis obviously has been a national leader, but we need to make it so much easier to do creative, responsive housing models, and we haven't been able to do that. And what I have up here, and you can put your phone on that, on the left hand, it's the zoning and land use, Neighbors for More Neighbors, again, our core partner. Our steering committee includes, in addition to MHP and Neighbors for More Neighbors, Sierra Club, ARC of Minneapolis, Leading Age, which is for elders advocacy. It has home builders, unions. So it's just this creative thing to try and allow all these kinds of models to work. Yeah.
And one thing that is positive is they've changed the rules about investing so that you can do crowdfunding of projects now. There's certain websites where the uppity up banking, whatever they are, have allowed people to say, well, okay, I can put in $500, and then TUI will have 100 people giving some money, and then he can make his project, and these people will get a return. But it's otherwise you have to have really rich people to put the money in.
Can I just say one more thing? So this may be a different program, and we were able to create a state housing tax credit 2 years or 3 years ago. And it provides about $11+ million a year of funding for projects. You apply for it. I've put mine. If you have any tax liability that you pay at the end of the year, you can get an 85 cents off the dollar of what you pay back, and that money goes to projects. On our website, mhponline.org, we have a list of affordable housing projects. So you can designate the funding to go to a specific project, or you can designate it just for the general fund, and then Minnesota Housing Finance Agency would put it into a variety of different projects. But so there's ways to, and then in some ways that's like a crowdsource, because congregations, local business community, throughout in greater Minnesota who need housing in their community, it's a way for them to actually fund their housing in their community. So it's great. Yeah, if you're not on the thing, your project on there.
We weren't able to get anybody here tonight to talk about the community land trust idea, which is another thing where people can, that there's investment in the land, so that what a family is paying for is the house, but not the land, which makes it more affordable. Yeah, okay. And then, anyway, there's a variety of things that we can get into, but do you want to mention that? And then I want to make sure everybody in the group, if you've got things you want to suggest. I've heard a couple things that I know I want to follow up on as a do, and I want to find out if there's other things that people are thinking about. But, you have a mic.
Yeah, so about the community land trust, that's actually what my development is under, is a community land trust. A quick funny story, though, is that when I first started the development, the neighbors directly next door, they were kind of peed off because they thought I was building a rental place, until I let them know that it's for home ownership. And they have been so very supportive about it. That whole block is actually under a community land trust. I like the community land trust model, which is basically where you purchase the home, but you never own the land. The land is actually through a community land trust. There's a few of them out here. Mine is under the CLCLT. And so what happens is that it reduces the amount that the homeowner has to pay, because they're not paying the full property. They're not paying any property taxes. They lease the land for $20 a month, but they still do pay their taxes on their home. One thing that I would like to add to that is that I love that model because it allows the family to keep more money in their pocket, but I do believe that we need an education piece behind that, because the money that those families are saving, for them not to spend it and do other things, but for them to invest to get themselves out of that situation and actually purchase another home where they don't have that community land trust.
So I want, especially Joe, if you feel, and that microphone works, I believe, and then if there's any questions through live stream, Sienna, you can let us know, or comments. But Joe, do you want to talk a little bit just about the many different things you've been involved with, and again, any suggestions you have about ways people can do?
Sure. Joe Nathan, I'm director of the Center for School Change, and it's evolved to the Catalyst for Systems Change. So we've been working on this for about 35 years, and I want to commend the Minnesota Women's Press for promoting a critical discussion in this state. I think we've spent hundreds of millions of dollars, and sadly, much of it badly. And we could have spent it much more wisely. There are some wonderful ideas that have been discussed here. We could have been doing more. 3 quick ideas. 1, we've talked about how much it costs to build a home. On our website, you'll see examples of 3-bedroom homes that have been built by high school kids, not theoretically, but now, some over the last 20 years. Noka-Hennepin, for example, the school district has been building 3-bedroom homes for less than $100,000. It's a collaboration, as you said, between builders, unions, high school students. The youngsters, Shemika being one of them, convinced the legislature to allocate additional money to create programs throughout the state of Minnesota. Not a theoretical idea, not in a report. It's been adopted, it's being carried out. Hundreds of thousands of dollars have already been allocated. High school kids all over the state are building homes. The kinds of models that a number of you are talking about are being done now, today. And thanks to you, this idea is being much more encouraged. But the point is, it doesn't have to cost $400,000 or $500,000. Point number 1, people could ask, is the local district applying to the Minnesota Housing Agency, which is giving out grants of $100,000 each to collaborations, such as your organization, to collaborations of school districts, students, parents, community groups to create these more affordable homes and models of the kind that a number of you have discussed. Point number one, people could ask the local school district, are you doing this because the money is there? It's not a theoretical idea, it's there now. Minnesota Housing Agency loves this idea. The board of directors loves this idea. Again, not a theory, not a research paper, it's being done. Point one. Point two, we need to understand that there are different populations of people experiencing homelessness. And I really want to appreciate what you've said in your courage stepping forward. This is not easy to do, to talk about your own personal experience. But we need to build on the strengths and the creativity of these young people. They've gone to the legislature. They've convinced legislators, in some cases fairly hostile legislators, as you politely mentioned, but they have built bipartisan support. And we need to build on the skills, the strengths. In your article, most recently, talks about building on the skills and the strengths, not the deficits, but the skills and the strengths and the energy of the young people who are eager, in some cases desperate, to help make a difference. So point number two, is your district, is your school, is your community building on the skills and the strengths and recognizing the critical importance of helping young people? Third, we have invested enormous amounts of money in shelters. Nobody wants youngsters or families to be frozen to death, of course. But the priority, according to the young people, ought to be permanent, affordable housing, and as you've suggested, services for families and youngsters who need it. But not all the kids need it. Not all the families need it. They just need, in many cases, an affordable, permanent housing place. So that's the third point. Last point. We have, through all kinds of good intentions, created an enormous array of red ink and regulations, and a number of you have talked about it. And I think the point that a couple of you have made is so critical. In the next election, we need to have a conversation about what can be reduced, what can be eliminated, so that a number of the creative ideas that have been discussed and in many cases created can flourish and can blossom, because via good intentions we have become a state of 10,000 not only lakes but regulations. And there's enormous creativity, some of which displayed on this platform, that is being stifled by making people jump through enormous hoops. It does not take 5 years to build. We have examples of high schools that have been doing it in a year. It does not take $500,000. We have examples of places that's done for less than $100,000. We have enormous strength in this state. We need an opportunity, it seems to me, to unleash much more of it. Thanks.
What's your website, Joe?
Two websites, catalystforsystemschange.org, www.catalystforsystemschange.org, and www. Center for School Change, both of which have case studies. And the executive director of Catalyst for Systems Change is a young man named Khalik Rogers. He and I have worked together for the last 14 years, and he and his family came to Minnesota having experienced homelessness, and his drive to do the kinds of things that Shamika and others have talked about, that drove him to do these things to empower young people to come to the legislature and make a difference.
I had one little story about NIMBYism and change. Is in California, there was this nice 2 or 3 acre spot, and this one lady said this would be perfect for co-housing, and so she went to the neighborhood and said, we want to buy this and build this co-housing. Oh, no, we don't want that. It was all single family houses. And time goes by, 10 years later, somebody who owns that property was proposing, let's build a big apartment building for rent. The neighbors come running back to her, hey, we want your co-housing instead.
Makes a big difference.
Anything else anybody wants to bring into the conversation? And Sienna, did you hear anything? Okay. Anything else? Because we're at time basically, but yeah. Fred and Polly. Polly. Yeah.
I had one very specific question for Ann. The Minneapolis 2040 plan changed zoning a lot. Could you give us an update, and do you think it's going to work?
It's a big question. What I would say is, and again, Pew Research actually has some really interesting data that they're tracking along with the Federal Reserve of Minneapolis, looking at what are the provisions within the 2040 plan that are actually making a difference. For example, eliminating parking minimums on apartment buildings, just meaning that the city's not requiring you to create parking. If a developer wants to and thinks they need to for the market, they can, but the city is not requiring the parking. That is one of the things that, by the data, has helped build more housing and more housing at lower price points. So that's like one example. And then there's other kinds of outcomes. Like there's levers that work better and quicker to create more housing. So yes, there's data. I can't cite it all right now, but yes.
I just wanted to mention the Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism has a housing project in North Minneapolis that's using both the land trust thing and more than one unit on a lot.
I was hoping to get Lena here tonight, but that didn't work.
Oh, I just have one more thing to say. I also feel like the housing market does play a important part in affordable housing, because sometimes you are able to afford the market rent, but then you have to make 3 times the rent, then you have to make 4 times the rent. So that's also an issue, because why do y'all just think that 18-year-olds just have all this money? Because we don't.
I will just say, as we're closing up, the point of optimism for me is that human beings have made all these policies, we have tied ourselves up in knots over generations with all these different rules, policies. You make too much money in public housing, you have to leave instead of being able to just pay the rent for it and stay in a community for that means that we get to change them. And so we can be smarter today and adopt all these new policies that are much better reflective of what we need and what we want and how we want our communities to look like. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, the same people that made these rules and made these situations are the same people that can change the situations and make new plans.
And smarter people for generations.
Yes. We're here for a generational change, not just for the moment.
Cool. Well, I'm going to wrap this up, but I know the main goal next is to be able to communicate around some of the stuff I heard tonight that could be done. Again, I think talking points, voting guide, what to ask people when they're running for office, et cetera, different ways and resources and advocacy organizations that deserve support. There's a lot of different things that we can do. And the plan is that after this, because Dodd Wilson wants us to get stuff done, is that Women's Press will be sort of following up on some of the things that we've heard and then inviting people to be part of teams to help support YIMBYism and other things. So, and then the idea is that over a few months we're gonna be tracking progress and stories to keep it present of mind, to maybe build on it with other people, and then eventually we're going to put everything in a print issue in May so that people can hold it and share it and have it. And so anyway, this is an ongoing, this is kind of was setting the stage, as I said, for what we want to do over the next few months. And Dodd will have some funds to help support some of what we do, depending on, everything that happens after this. So that is it, because I always tell Jacob I'm not going to make him work later than he's supposed to anymore. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.